So a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, I posted a video about my original Pokemon Blue Game Boy cartridge. And in the comments, somebody mentioned that you can actually get high quality, essentially Game Boy remakes nowadays. I thought I knew what they were talking about. I said, is this the one that Casey Neistat recently did a video about? And I think they said, yeah, that's the one. And so I see ads for this every now and then. And essentially, it's similar to those sort of emulator Game Boy shaped handheld consoles that you'll see on Amazon or advertised on Instagram or TikTok. I assume on TikTok. I don't have TikTok. But it's similar to those, but instead of being a cheaply made emulator for 40, 50, or 60 bucks, it's slightly more. I want to say it's like 100 or 120. But this thing is made out of real solid material like the original Game Boys were, where, I don't know if you've ever seen, but there's an original Game Boy in a museum somewhere that was actually blown up during Desert Storm that was in the possession of, I think, an American soldier who was just using it to kill time while he was out on duty. And his Humvee got hit by an IED, and the Game Boy survived. It's like half melted, it's all burnt and deformed, but it still runs. They have it like connected to a power cord and it still plays. So like that's a testament, is that right? That's a testament to how solid the original Game Boy construction was and how well electronics were constructed and just, you know, consumer goods were constructed back in the day in general, which is crazy to think that that was during my lifetime. Like I had one of those. They came out when I was a child and I got one. And things have come so far from that now the standard is you spend $1,000 on a smartphone and it might last a year and a half if you take really good care of it before it starts to run into all kinds of weird issues. It's just bizarre to me. But anyways, I mean, it's not bizarre. It's partially by design. We're not going to get into that right now, though. So I may end up grabbing myself one of those new higher-end Game Boy reproductions. I can't exactly remember what it's called, but I believe you can sideload games to it, but also it takes regular real Game Boy cartridges, and the people who have developed it, or the gentleman who has developed it and started the company that makes them, has begun to fund the production of brand new Game Boy games. Like games that never existed on Game Boy or Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advanced, any of those, like new games that you would usually release on Steam are going to be released on real physical cartridges to play in this thing. That might be short-lived and really limited, but that's still super cool that somebody is trying to revive that type of gaming tech. I love physical media. I love collecting Blu-rays and not HD DVDs, that died. Blu-rays and UHD 4K Blu-rays and like records, like vinyl records. I have a not pretty nice. I have like a nice entry-level record player upstairs. But I love physical media, and I'm really sad that it's all kind of going away, other than the people that are fighting to stop it from going away. And so having a physical Game Boy with brand new Game Boy games would be really cool. Anyways, all that aside, my son does have one of those cheaper, like $50 or $60 emulator systems that looks like a Game Boy. That does not have like a cartridge space, at least I don't think it has a cartridge slot. And it's meant just for you to take a mini USB or a micro USB and load a bunch of ROMs onto it, and it runs like an emulator system. And it works really well. It's a little finicky to get the games loaded onto it. You have to learn how to use a couple of funky pieces of software, but if you're okay with computers and using random third-party softwares, it's not hard at all. You do a little bit of reading, a little bit of research, you'll get it all figured out. And the nice thing is, because games were much smaller back in the 80s and 90s, if you want to load like every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game that's ever existed onto it, it takes like 2 minutes, 5 minutes. If you want to load every single Sega Genesis or, you know, Master Series, whatever you want to call it, depending on what country you were in when it came out, if you want to load all of those games, it takes like, you know, less than 10 minutes. If you want to load a few dozen PlayStation 1 or N64 games, it takes, you know, 5 or 10 minutes. The games are really small, and so you can have massive libraries for many, many consoles on this tiny little emulator for free after spending the initial 50 or 60 bucks to get a hold of the emulator. And it even has like a HDMI micro output that you can plug into your television so you can play it on the TV and use it as a controller. I bought my son like a 15-foot HDMI cable to do that. I myself have played some Pokemon and some Gran Turismo 1 on the big TV, and it's an absolute blast. It's not by any means a luxury item. It's not the most well-built. I'm fairly certain if we dropped it once, it would be broken. So it's nothing like that, you know, original Game Boy that could be blown up by a literal bomb and survive and still function. But it is a really cool, affordable device that gets you tons of gaming and is a way to introduce either your kids or to relive for yourself games from a different era that were made with a different intention, that weren't filled with garbage and bloat, and they were actually just games. They were challenging, they were fun, they were diverse. There was a lot of like cowboy software engineering going on at the time, so they would they would invent new things. Like the first Easter egg is in the what is it, the E.T. game, which is an Atari 2600 game that's terrible. I have a physical copy of it. I also have an Atari 2600. They were my mom's from when she was a kid, like in the 60s or 70s. And so, yeah, it's a cool way to introduce that stuff for a small amount of money sort of back into your life. So for that reason, my wife was looking for something to get our young nephew. I think he's 9 or 10, or he's turning 9 or 10. We wanted to get him something for Christmas that he could enjoy that wouldn't sort of... It's hard when you buy him modern things because we don't know how his parents are going to feel about modern things. Like if you buy him a Nerf gun, are they against toy guns? If you buy him a game for Nintendo Switch, are there things in that game that they don't like? I don't know. If you go back to the 80s and 90s, chances are there isn't going to be a ton in those games that were designed for kids that have any sort of risque component to them. And if they do, it's 8-bit, right? Like Ninja Gaiden is slashing enemies with a sword, but it's, you know, tiny little pixels on a screen. There's no blood, there's no gore, there's no viscera, there's no real violence to it, right? And so we figured if we get him one of these little emulators and load it with a bunch of games like I did with my sons, I preloaded it with, I think, every single Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and some PS1 games. But every single game for those first consoles that I mentioned, literally every one, I found bulk files that you can just load them in. If we give him something like that, my nephew, then chances are most of that is totally safe, and hopefully his parents will be very okay with him having it. And yes, it's a screen, but it's not a screen, you know? It's like a 2-inch by 2-inch square. Actually, so I want to show it to you. So this is the device right here. This is literally the one we're going to be giving him. This is the one that I bought for my son, so I trust it. I did a bunch of research before I bought it, and I didn't feel like redoing the research. I don't think things have really changed in the last year since we got my son his. But this is by a company or a random Chinese factory called Anbernic. See if I can get that to not be so glary. And this model is the RG35XX, same one we got my son. It looks, as you can see from the cover, and I'll show you in a second, it looks like a Game Boy Color with some extra buttons. It looks like a Game Boy Color with like the Super Nintendo buttons on it. So if I open this up, and I'm going to try to be very careful with this because I have not loaded it yet. We're going to load it up before we give it to my nephew, because otherwise it would be up to him and his parents to load it, and like I said, it's a bit tricky. So we got him the standard Game Boy pattern, or no, this is the translucent Game Boy pattern. So if we open it up, and I'll have to pack this back up nicely after I load it, got a little bit of foam covering the front there, and if we remove that, you'll see might be something like a 2.5-inch or a 3-inch by 2 or 2.5-inch screen. It's got your A, B, X, Y buttons, start, select, a menu button, and a D-pad. And on the back, it's got a bunch of triggers. So I'll show you the device here. So that's it there. And if I flip it around, you'll see it's got 4 triggers, 2 on each side on the back. It's got 2 USB slots on, SD slots on the side there. Don't know if you can see them. One of them holds the software and the ROMs, and the other one is used for side loading additional ROMs onto the system. So you have to use, and I think they're physically wired differently inside of the device, if I remember. Like, you have to use these in a very specific way. That's part of how the software for loading is a bit funky. And then on the side, we have a power button and a reset button, and on the opposite side, we have a volume button. At the top, you can see it does have that HDMI mini, I believe it is. And then at the bottom, we have USB-C charging and a headphone jack. Again, a physical headphone jack, not a thing that you see on a lot of devices anymore. It does have a built-in speaker that's not bad. And it's a full, like, crisp LED full-color screen. It's really nice. The battery life is pretty good, especially if you turn the brightness on the screen down. And it feels good in the hand. Like, if you grew up in the 90s or the early 2000s and you pick one of these up, it's immediately going to feel like childhood. Like, it's built to fit the spec pretty well. Now, that being said, I would still love to have one of those other, the newer devices that were developed to be more realistic, accurate recreations of the original Game Boy. But for a kid who's almost certainly going to damage it in some way, and who isn't going to really appreciate the quality and the value of something like that Game Boy recreation, something like this is great, especially since, like I said, it comes with all, or you can put on it all of those different games. So if you're looking to try one of these out, if you haven't tried one of them out, if you haven't seen one before, if you're feeling nostalgic, if you want to relive some of your childhood, or you want to share some of your childhood with your kids, This is a great way to do it. Like I said, this one, the RG35XX, my son has had for over a year. I've done all the work to set it up to make sure that it is running the way that it should, that it has a good number of games. I've played it for a while myself. He's played it a ton. And it is a solid, reliable device. There are different variants of it. There are some that have a wider screen, a smaller screen. There are some that are shaped like different versions of the Game Boy. So this is shaped more like the Game Boy Color. There's one that's shaped like the Game Boy, I think it's the Game Boy SP. It was like a regular sized, thin Game Boy Color that folded. This is before the DS came out. Bunch of different variants of it. And then there are some other brands that make them as well. They look a bit more like a Game Boy Advanced. It's more of a landscape device, or like a Game Gear, compared to this, which is more of the standard portrait shaped, vertical shaped Game Boy Color or Game Boy. But yeah, they're worth picking up. They're a lot of fun. If you don't mind something that could break at any moment, probably going to get a few years use out of it. But if you bang it around too much, it's probably not super durable. But for 40 to 60 bucks, they're a lot of fun. You get them set up with the games you like, and you can have a blast with them. If you travel a lot, if you're like me, I've even considered getting one for myself because I'm on a plane so much. And I figure, you know, on a plane, in an Uber, sitting in a hotel room, being able to pull this out and play some Pokemon or some Ninja Gaiden, or, you know, whatever else on there, some original Legends of Zelda or some of the older Legend of Zelda games, would be a lot of fun. Or just, like I said, I'm thinking, even right now, I'm thinking Game Boy. It's an emulator, so any N64 PS1 game, some of my favorite games are on PS1. So yeah, it runs all of them without an issue. So if you haven't checked them out, check them out. They're fun, they're cheap, they're worth it in my opinion. But anyways, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, have any questions about this or anything else related to old video games or anything, feel free to ask in the comments down below. Leave a like or a dislike so I know if you've enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of these, subscribe to the channel. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next one.